Hello, guys. Welcome to episode 3 of Brainwave Boulevard. I am your host, Justin Chin, and today we are going to talk about the marginalization of prostitutes in ancient Rome. For some background information, prostitution was a prevalent and accepted practice in ancient Rome. Prostitutes were everywhere. It was estimated that 1 in every 100 people, including men, women, and children, were prostitutes in Pompeii. Despite being deemed a necessary profession in ancient Rome, prostitution was a marginalized and stigmatized practice, as evidenced by city layouts, religious practices, literary works from influential writers, and even the legal framework of the Roman society. The practice of prostitution was widespread throughout the Roman Republic and Empire. And while only one building has been specifically identified as a brothel and only a brothel, there were numerous other establishments where prostitutes were service their clients. In fact, the vast majority of places where prostitutions took place were multi-purpose buildings such as taverns, inns, restaurants, and even amphitheaters. Roman cities did not have clearly marked neighborhoods for the rich and poor. Instead, brothels occupied spaces in cities with residential of both upper and lower class, along with commercial buildings. The widespread nature of prostitution highlights the absence of a dedicated red light district, such as the one found in modern-day Amsterdam. Rather than being confined to a specific area, prostitution was widespread throughout the cities. On the other hand, in the city of Pompeii lies the only brothel that doesn't serve a second function. The Lupinare was discovered to be quote-unquote hidden away from the temple of Pompeii. While it may be easy to assume that this was due to the belief that brothels were impure and that they had to get the brothel away from the purity of the temples, it is important to note that this is the only brothel that has been discovered this far. And by brothel, I mean quote-unquote true brothel. It is possible that in other cities, brothels or even multi-purpose establishments that offered prostitution services were located near the temples of other cities. However, writings by Roman authors say otherwise. I approached a little old lady selling farm produce. "Tell me, mother," I said, "have you any idea where I hang out?" She was tickled by such asinine wits and replied, "Yes, no problem." She then got up and began to lead the way. I thought she had second sight and followed after. Then, when we reached some hole in the corner place, the witty old creature threw back a patchwork curtain and said, "This must be where you stay." I was just remarking that I did not recognize the lodging when my eyes fell on some men furtively pacing around the price tags of naked prostitutes. It slowly dawned on me all too late that I had been brought to a brothel. The brothel in this text is described as some quote-unquote hole in the place, which helps support the notion that brothels were hidden away, although there is still a chance that brothels were found near temples or religious sites. Prostitution was often portrayed by Roman writers as the most degrading and shameful occupation a woman could engage in, reflecting the social and cultural attitudes towards sex workers in ancient Rome. An old rhetorical exercise from one of the elder Seneca explores the possibility of a prostitute becoming a priestess in ancient Rome. One side of the argument asserts that attendants of the priestess would be obligated to remove prostitutes from the presence of the pure priestess, suggesting that prostitutes were seen as impure and unworthy of holding such a sacred position. This idea highlights the stigma and marginalization that prostitutes faced in Roman society, where they were often regarded as immoral and excluded from the mainstream. The exercise provides insight into cultural and religious attitudes towards prostitution in ancient Rome and sheds light on the challenges faced by those who have worked in this profession. Also, according to historical records, Cato the Censor believed that prostitution was a necessary institution that served a timeless purpose. His argument was that the existence of prostitution was a existence of brothels provided an outlet for sexual desire, thus reducing the likelihood of men cheating on their wives or getting together with your wife if you're a man. This perspective sheds light on the role of prostitution in ancient Rome and suggests that it was seen as a practical solution to a common problem. However, it is important to note that Cato's endorsement of prostitution does not negate the fact that prostitutes were marginalized and stigmatized in ancient Roman society. The existence of brothels may have been viewed as a necessary evil that acted as a kind of societal safety valve, but it did not necessarily confer respect or social acceptance to those who worked in the sex trade. Religious practices in ancient Rome also contributed to the stigmatization and marginalization of prostitutes. The prevalence of various cults throughout the Roman Republic and Empire also reinforced negative attitudes towards prostitutes. In many cases, prostitutes were excluded from participating in ancient ritual society, religious ceremonies, or were only allowed to participate in certain roles that were deemed appropriate for their lowly status. This further perpetuated the perception of prostitutes as impure and unworthy of full inclusion in Roman society, as a result of being excluded from mainstream religious practices. Prostitutes were relegated to separate cults. As an example, the rites of Venus Erycina were celebrated with prostitutes outside the Porta Colonna, while respectable women worshipped the goddess in the center of the city, in the Capitol line. While the segregation of prostitutes and respectable women in religious practices further reinforced marginalization of prostitutes, they were still able to participate in public religious celebrations that were attended by the entire community. In fact, during the Floralia festival, which was dedicated to the coming of spring, prostitutes played a significant role in the success of the festival as they offered their services to festival goers. Prostitutes in ancient Rome were marginalized in the legal system for a variety of laws and regulations that restricted their rights and freedoms, further reinforcing their social exclusion. Within the legal system, prostitutes were grouped together along with gladiators and actors in a category labeled infames, a category prescribed to those socially disreputable or of low status. Of course, women were inherently disadvantaged and did not have the same access to power and legal rights as men in ancient Rome. So, some of these laws and regulations were instead targeted towards male prostitutes. Although there was not as many male prostitutes as female ones. Where is the last speck of dust? Hello? I swear I sound a little, huh? I guess not. Where was I? Of course, there were male prostitutes, although there were not as many not as many male prostitutes as female prostitutes. Historical evidence, however, confirms that they did. Although there were not as many male prostitutes as female ones, and they were not prominently featured in literature, historical evidence confirms that they did exist. For example, Paulus, an renowned legal scholar who served as a praetorian prefect, asserted that a husband was legally permitted to kill a male prostitute if found having sex with his wife, reiterating the fact that prostitutes were a part of the group that were called the infames. They were subject to various legal regulations in ancient Rome, including being banned from holding public office, participating in political activities, and even serving in the military. While the restriction on the serving in the military may appear insignificant, it is important to note that military service was a crucial aspect to social and economic advancement in ancient Rome. Successful military service could lead to promotion, financial gain, and even citizenship, making it a pathway for individuals to improve their social status and social status and economic opportunities. Therefore, the ban on the military for those categorized as infames was a significant impediment to the ability to climb the social and economic ladder in ancient Roman society. The legal system in ancient Rome further marginalized prostitutes through the implementation of laws that prohibited them from marrying freeborn Romans. Two such laws were passed during the reign of Emperor Augustus, which specifically banned the marriage between freeborn Romans and those categorized as infames. Prohibiting marriage on prostitutes in ancient Rome between free Romans had a negative impact on the lives of prostitutes in ancient Rome. Marriage was a significant aspect of Roman society, not just for love and companionship, but also for financial and social standing. Marriage provided a woman with legal protection and financial support, and it was an essential factor in determining social status. By prohibiting the marriage between freeborn Romans and prostitutes, the legal system effectively cut off an avenue for these women to achieve social and financial stability. Additionally, the ban created an invisible line that divided prostitutes from the rest of the pure freeborn Romans and prostitutes, as well as the restrictions mentioned. Overall, the prohibition of marriage between freeborn Romans and prostitutes, as well as the restrictions mentioned earlier, placed on the infamous, are just a few ways the legal system in ancient Rome discriminated against and oppressed this marginalized group. The legal system in ancient Rome implemented various measures to oppress and discriminate against prostitutes, extending beyond the bans expressed in the previous paragraph. Prostitutes faced systematic discrimination within the legal courts of ancient Rome, which perpetuated the marginalization of society. Prostitutes, along with other individuals classified as infamous, were not allowed to serve on juries or act as advocates in the court of law. Prostitutes being barred from serving on juries or acting as witnesses in court further perpetuated the stigmatization of the profession by implying a lack of trustworthiness associated with prostitutes. An even more striking form of legal discrimination against prostitutes was the prohibition against them appointing others to act as their representatives in court. This left them without legal recourse and vulnerable to the court system that obviously did not trust prostitutes. Legal authorities in ancient Rome encouraged judges to base their trust in a person's social and moral standing within society, thereby reinforcing the prejudice against prostitutes whose profession was considered shameful. Consequently, the testimony of prostitutes defending themselves was often disregarded in court proceedings. This practice perpetuated the notion that prostitutes were untrustworthy and unworthy of equal treatment under the law. Overall, these legal measures against prostitutes illustrate the systematic oppression and marginalization of this group in ancient Rome, where they were considered untrustworthy in the eyes of the law and the people. Because of their status as infamous, prostitutes were treated unequally as they were stripped of many legal rights and protections that were granted to other citizens. The establishment of the Roman Republic aimed to prevent magistrates from abusing their power by using a symbol of the authority called the virgae, which could be used arbitrarily. To safeguard the plebeians from such abuse, the tributes of the plebeians were introduced to represent the will of the plebeians. Despite the development of the Republic to protect citizens from arbitrary punishment by magistrates, this protection did not extend to prostitutes due to their low social and moral status, even if they were originally full Roman citizens. Consequently, prostitutes were not protected by the treatment of the plebs, and were considered to be liable to corporal punishment. However, there is an instance of a prostitute being protected under the law, although the prostitute is already dead in the passage. And the mother of the prostitute, a certain Theodora, a poor old woman, asked that Diodemos should be compelled to provide for her a subsistence allowance as a small recompense. For she said, "It was for this reason that I gave my daughter to the brothel keeper, so that I should be able to have sustenance, Since I have been deprived of my means of livelihood by the death of my daughter, I therefore ask that I be given the modest needs of a woman for my subsistence. The prefect said to Didymus, "You have murdered a woman who makes a shameful reproach of her fortune among men, and that she led a moral life, and then she plied her trade. Indeed, I have taken pity upon the wretch, because when she was alive, she was available to anyone who wanted her, just like a corpse. For the poverty of a woman, mother's fortune, so overwhelmingly oppressed that she sold her daughter for a shameful price, so that she incurred the notoriety of a prostitute." Here Didymus was found guilty and executed, with a portion of his property handed over to the mother. It is worth noting that in this particular case, the magistrate showed sympathy towards the mother, given that her daughter was forced into prostitution as a result of the family's property. It is important to remember that such cases were rare in nature, and more often than not, prostitutes were poorly treated in society. A skeleton with a collar found in North Africa bears a chilling message that sheds light on the harsh reality that prostitutes face. The inscription, translated by Robert Knapp as, quote-unquote, "This is a cheating whore. Seize her, because she has escaped from Bulgaria," speaks to the dehumanization and brutal treatment of the prostitutes in ancient Rome. In conclusion, the treatment of prostitutes in ancient Rome was a reflection of their poorly low social and moral status. Although prostitution was largely stigmatized and prostitutes faced various forms of mistreatment in ancient Rome, the existence of courtesans, high-class prostitutes, brings some complexities to the table. Some courtesans were forced into the trade of prostitution like many others. In specific cases, there were instances of emperors forcing aristocratic wives to serve as prostitutes. What else am I missing? Hello? Hello? What am I missing? Hello? What am I missing? For example, Caligula opened a brothel in his residence where the wives of aristocratic men would serve the guests of the emperor. Where is it? Here? Aha! Hello? 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 Where is it? Hello? Where is it? Where was I? It is worth noting that Caligula as an emperor was not well liked by the people of Rome, so there is a chance that this is purely slander. In other cases, there were aristocratic women who became prostitutes, who willingly became prostitutes, to escape the punishment of adultery. Even though these aristocratic women did become prostitutes, well, Where's the last one? Hello? Hello? Okay. Even though these aristocratic women did become prostitutes, it is unlikely that they participated in the services that prostitutes provided. Unlike common prostitutes, courtesans were educated in various arts. Hello? What the heck? Unlike common prostitutes, courtesans were educated in various arts, such as music and dance. They were also known for their sophistication and beauty, which made them sought after by elite men. The existence of courtesans allowed wealthy men to indulge in sexual relationships without tarnishing their reputation or social status. Roman writers had a fascination with courtesans, which is evident in the works of such as The Lives of Famous Prostitutes, a book by Suetonius. Although this book has not survived to the present day, its existence suggests a level of admiration for the courtesans of ancient Rome. Even though courtesans were favored by the elite, they still suffered from the same classification as being infamous as other prostitutes in the trade. The existence of courtesans and their social influence challenges the traditional understanding of prostitution in ancient Rome, highlighting the contradictions and complex views Romans had of courtesans. In conclusion, while prostitution was seen as a necessary evil in ancient Rome, it was also stigmatized and marginalized by society. The scattered and hidden nature of the brothels throughout the cities, the negative portrayal of prostitutes in literary works, the exclusion of prostitutes from certain religious practices and limited legal protections highlights a social and cultural prejudice against prostitutes. Despite this stigma, courtesans act as challengers to this notion through a higher social standing than common prostitutes. Understanding the complex dynamics of prostitution can provide valuable insights towards attitudes towards gender and sexuality in the ancient world. Thank you for joining me for episode 3 of Brainwave Boulevard. This was an episode about the marginalization of prostitutes in ancient Rome, and I hope you have a good rest of your day. Goodbye. On behalf of Brainwave Boulevard.